For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dhlamini. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me for Suttner's View, a weekly commentary on South Africa's political scene. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
A range of things are happening around Zuma himself, as well as projects with which he is associated with, like the appointment at ESCOM, DENEL, and preoccupation of politicians and with the public state capture. Are we approaching a crisis?
You know, there's so many things that have been happening that sometimes I wonder whether there's anywhere else in the world that someone could survive this. But then I look at the United States of America and I can see that there seem to be a lot of things with Trump. Maybe they are brothers, you know, from different mothers, because Trump is also engaged in a lot of things that are illegal or could have their legality questioned. There is a situation where one would expect that the position of the president would be vulnerable. Just yesterday, there was a report on state capture, and about a week ago, by a number of academics yesterday. I haven't been able to read it through yet, but because it only came last night. But a week ago there was the unburdening panel of the South African Council of Churches, and there's been a lot of evidence by Amabungane and a number of others, which other investigative journalists and academics, that have shown that not only is there widespread corruption in South Africa, but that the state itself is no longer being governed purely by office bearers appointed by the president. That decisions, not just about contracts being corrupt, but decisions in terms of appointments may well, and there's strong evidence, be influenced to a significant degree by people who are not empowered under the Constitution to make those decisions. So it's a very dangerous state of affairs, and this week in the Public Enterprises Committee and the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, there were extremely acrimonious exchanges between parliamentarians from the ANC and other parties towards the Minister of Public Enterprise, the board of ESCOM, the returned CEO of ESCOM, Brian Molefe, and the board of DENEL. A week ago there was also another inquiry where there were a lot of heated exchanges between various state security organs, the police, the Hawks, and the IPID and so forth. And there's a connection between the two, because state capture or corruption at a higher or greater level can only thrive where the policing, prosecuting, intelligence and other authorities are inept and direct their energies towards people who are barriers to corruption. In other words, people who want to prevent looting are targeted, and those who are looted, somehow or other investigations go nowhere. Like the deputy head of SARS, Mamakwa, there's an investigation which was only, or let's say there was acquisition of funds which was deposited through an ATM, like $1 million to him and his girlfriend, which only really got investigated after it was revealed in the media. You have that sort of thing happening, but on the other hand, and not intense prosecution. On the other hand, before the dismissal of people from SARS, people like Gordhan and other ministers. There was a lot of activities by the Hawks, Dhlamini especially threatening, sending threatening letters to Gordhan, and the NPA, we remember, did have a prosecution last year that fell away. So one has to ask, why is it, with all of this being in the public domain, why is it that Zuma seems fairly confident? You've got a situation at a political level as well, where COSATU has said he cannot address them. People say this is unprecedented, and it is, because when people were rising up against Mbeki, they burned T-shirts with his image on it, things like this. But no, there was no situation where Mbeki could not address COSATU or the Communist Party, and they've said to him he cannot address them. SACP and COSATU and Sanko and others have called on the president to resign, even though the Communist Party is still in the cabinet. And now they've got their reasons, whatever justifications are for the reasons, got reasons for remaining in the cabinet or as deputy ministers and so forth. But how can you coexist in the same cabinet when you're calling for this person to resign and for there to be an investigation into state capture? When state capture is at its very least, it appears in just about every account that the president and members of his family are at the center of it. There is an ANC National Executive Committee meeting this week, and a lot of journalists spend their time counting who will vote for removal of Zuma, who will not. My guess is that they will just drift on, and that the ANC will not vote for a vote of no confidence. Although, if they don't want to be siding with the opposition, it would be better for them to get rid of Zuma. But my guess is that the NEC is not going to come to that decision. Some reports say they're not as fired by the desire to remove him as was the case at the end of last year. I don't know. I've not got an inside track into what they're thinking. I think one of the chief problems that they have is that there is not confidence on the part of sufficient number of the ANC leadership, even though COSATU and the SACP appear to have endorsed him in Ramaphosa to take over. And that may be one barrier, but somehow or other they don't get the acts together. I may be wrong. I hope he goes. Is an important step to get rid of Zuma.
So what does all of this mean for the survival of Zuma?
You know, Zuma, I think, is he's fairly, he's been facing up to dangers for a lot of his presidency. He's been there as president of the ANC for 10 years, president of the country for 8 years. Even before he was elected, he was facing charges. So he's got quite strong nerves, and also he probably has dirt on a lot of people. Or there are people who are benefiting from him being there. Now, all of this is short-termism. But for Zuma, if he resigns, the probability of him being charged is higher than if he stays in office as long as possible and tries to get someone to succeed him who he favors. So I think he's going to try and sit it out, and I am not sure what the power is of others to remove him. You must remember that all of them are very conflicted because they brought Zuma in. Just about everyone who's calling for his resignation was involved in bringing Zuma into power. And so it's difficult for them. On the other hand, the level of public outrage is becoming a significant factor. and people may come into the streets more. But, you know, it's very hard to predict. They tend to be outraged over a particular episode and then go back to their business and hope that the rand will recover. Like the rand was recovering this week on the basis of a rumor that there would be a motion of no confidence. But I think it's very important that we don't have a country ruled by market sentiment, by ratings agencies, all of these things. I think it's important that we don't do things as a vulnerable economy. We don't do things that hits the rand or hits our ratings. But on the other hand, I'd like to see the day when we decide for ourselves what is best for the country, irrespective of what rating agencies believe, because we are doing the right thing. Now we are doing the wrong thing in terms of stealing from the public, in terms of our leaders, but we are also having the economy take a big knock.
Thank you, Professor. That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Crema Media's Polity about the crisis of Zuma presidency coming to a head.